I'm almost done with my bachelor's degree now, and I remember 4 years ago in the beginning, I was one of the few students using an iPad to take notes in class. Nowadays, I think it's much more normal to use an iPad for digital note-taking, but you might still wonder if you should get an iPad or a MacBook for studying, or if you maybe need both. So today I want to give you my experience, having tried out pretty much every possible configuration throughout my degree, and then I will also give you a general answer of what I think is most important, as well as an answer depending on your subject, and in the end I'll even give you my best value pick for your kind of studying ecosystem overall. I studied economics and business administration, and I started out by using both a MacBook and an iPad. I used the MacBook mostly for all text-based note-taking and the iPad for basically all of the rest, which in my business subjects was kind of a lot because all of the math stuff is just easier to do on an iPad because all of the formulas are not that easy to do on a Mac if you're not really used to doing that. But then after one semester, first of all, COVID hit, so I was kind of bored and at home, so I think that definitely also played into it. But I also really liked using my iPad, and I thought maybe I could just use that instead of my laptop, get a better iPad, get a keyboard as well, and just use only that for pretty much both, so I don't have to take both to class. And even though I gave the iPad more than one shot and tried on more than one occasion, it was just too annoying, especially with all the online lectures. For example, maybe sometimes you want to have Zoom open and take notes at the same time without having to always split your screen, or you will use Word, and it's just really annoying on the iPad because many things don't work as you expect, and it becomes very apparent that it would oftentimes be easier to do stuff on a Mac or a Windows PC. I really enjoyed the iPad for when it was working well because it's like a more focused way of working and it's like a lighter OS, but in the end it was just too annoying and I went back to using both an iPad and a Mac. And from that point out I basically just used the iPad as a paper replacement, which was kind of a waste having an iPad Pro just for that. It was nice because of the size, but still it was kind of a waste, and it basically was just laying around if I was not like taking notes on it. For my thesis, I could have done that on the iPad because I used LaTeX and I did it in Overleaf, which is a web-based LaTeX editor. So I could have done the same on the iPad, but still like copying text sometimes works in a weird way on the iPad. It's just little things like that that make working on the iPad sometimes really annoying if it just doesn't want to do the thing you want to do, and which you know that could be really easy on a MacBook. So yeah, I could have done my thesis on the iPad. I heard people talk about that being like the crux, which I don't think is true if you do it in LaTeX and not in Word, but still it's just too annoying in too many ways. So I basically just went back to using the iPad as a paper replacement, which is kind of annoying because I still like using an iPad, but there's just too many ways which make it too annoying for me. And also in the meantime, if you're not super techie, that's probably not that interesting to you, but Apple basically brought the chips from the iPad to the MacBooks, and so that made them much faster and gave them better battery life, and it just meant that using a MacBook was much more fun and also more efficient and made me work faster. So yeah, I quite enjoyed having both, but it was just kind of annoying having an expensive iPad Pro basically laying around most of the time. So that means for my general answer, what are the benefits of an iPad? I think you can basically do anything you want on an iPad, especially now because Safari has gotten much more powerful on the iPad, and you also have Stage Manager. You can do note-taking much better than on a MacBook just because you have the ability to use an Apple Pencil, so that means you can have a really great all-in-one device. But on the other hand, the benefits of using a Mac are just that so many things are much easier to do on a real desktop OS, and that's just stuff like copying text to your clipboard, editing Word documents, editing Excel sheets, stuff like that, which you wouldn't really think about because all those apps exist on the iPad. In many instances they're just so much more annoying to use, and using an iPad can just feel like death by 1,000 cuts every time something doesn't work as expected, and I think it will really hinder your productivity during your studies if you only use an iPad. So I think a Mac or a Windows laptop, whatever you prefer, is still a must for studying as effectively as you can. And that's coming from me, which I was really determined to make the iPad work as a laptop replacement. You can also see my old videos on my channel talking about that kind of stuff, but it just didn't really work out. It was just too annoying all of the time. That being said, it's still really beneficial to have the iPad for digital note-taking, and I think if you can afford it, just getting an iPad 9th gen or an old iPad Air refurbished is really nice just to not have to deal with all of the paper stuff. I used to be really bad about this when I was in high school, and having an iPad is just really beneficial for that, just because it just helped me get rid of all of the clutter, have everything in one place. You can use like GoodNotes or Notability, whatever you prefer, and then it makes it so much more organized immediately because you can search everything. And I will still recommend it if you can afford the additional cost, but I would not go for like a top of the line iPad if you're not like really rich and just basically don't care about the money. In addition to that general answer, I think it's also important to really consider your subject. For most subjects, I think the general answer will hold true, but definitely make sure to check if you need any specific programs that only run on Windows or Mac, or maybe if even an iPad might be better if you're doing something that's like design or digital art focused and you really don't need to do a lot of text processing and stuff like that, then maybe I think it's even a better choice. Just make sure to know what programs you're required to run for the courses, and then you're pretty much good to go. Alright, I promised you one last thing in the beginning. What's the best value recommendation if you have nothing right now and you want to really be set for like 5 or 6 years? For a laptop, I would go for the MacBook Air, and I would go for the M2 version just because it's much nicer than the M1 version. And honestly, you can go for sales or for a refurbished model. It's just much nicer and it's not really that much more expensive. Go for the 15-inch if you prefer that, but I think the 13.6-inch should be the default one for a student. It has amazing battery life. Even the base model will be enough if you don't study something that's like demanding on processing power, but you will know that if you do. And so yeah, I think that's the best laptop to get right now as a student. And then for the iPad, I would go for, as I said, probably the iPad Air 2020 is a great deal if you can get it refurbished, because it has the better design compared to the iPad 10th gen that's out right now. It has the same processor and it costs pretty much the same, but has the nicer Apple Pencil that can just snap to the side and charge there. If that's still too expensive for you, I would just go for the iPad 9th gen, just because you can get that for really cheap refurbished and you can still use like the old Lightning Apple Pencil. I'm not really sure about the new USB-C pencil they released, so yeah, I would just skip the iPad 10th gen and the new pencil altogether and go for one of the two I recommended here. If you need any more processing power, I think you will know, but my base recommendation with like a lot of headroom for a couple of years will be the MacBook Air M2 or the M3 version of that whenever it comes out, in whichever size you prefer. If it's too expensive, get refurbished. And the iPad Air 2020 or the iPad 9th gen just for digital note-taking, basically just as a paper replacement. Alright, I hope I could help you out today and make this whole thing a little bit easier for you. If I did, please let me know in the comments and enjoy your studies.